Welcome, everyone. We have members and guests today to our Lunch with League. Before we get started, I want to introduce myself. My name is Carol Watts, and I'm president of the League of Women Voters of San Jose, Santa Clara. We host this series of events on the third Thursday of most months of the year, and we have conversations with people usually in government or in public service who affect our lives. And today we're pleased to welcome Rolando Bonilla to speak with us. He's the chair of the Planning Commission for the city of San Jose. And I know I want to learn more about what this important commission does and the issues that they are now addressing. I would like to welcome any new attendees to our virtual luncheon today. And we're so pleased that all of you are here. We invite everyone to join us at about 1 o'clock, right after this part of the meeting is over, and when we will join in like a meeting format so we can chat. So all of you are welcome. It's not the same as being in person, but maybe the next best. And if you're not a member, we urge you to join our organization. Just go to the website at lwvsjsc.org and click on Join the League. Or you may sign up for our newsletter and continue to attend Lunch with League and all other public events. Thanks to all of you who voted this week. During our presentation today, if you want to ask a question of our speaker, just feel free to enter that into chat. We're so pleased to welcome Rolando Bonilla to speak with us today. He is the chair of the San Jose Planning Commission. Rolando has served on the Planning Commission since October of 2019, and he was unanimously elected the chair of the commission this June after it was increased from 7 to 11 members, following voter approval in November 2020 to improve racial and geographical representation on the commission. The City Council now appoints one commissioner from each City Council district and one at-large member. On a personal note, Rolando survived COVID earlier this year after spending several days in the hospital. He's the founder of the East San Jose COVID Relief Fund. He began his public service career in San Francisco after graduating from San Francisco Law School. He was appointed by then San Francisco Supervisor Gavin Newsom and Mayor Willie Brown to serve on several city commissions. And I understand he's also worked with Kamala Harris. So this man's pretty well connected. Then he moved to Silicon Valley, where he advised San Jose's council member, Nora Campos, as her communications director. In addition to his service on the Planning Commission, Rolando is currently the Chief Strategy Officer at Volair Strategic Advisors, a communication firm which offers public relations, crisis management, and communication strategies to organization. He's also a board member for the Healthier Kids Foundation in Santa Clara County. It's a nonprofit that helps uninsured children receive access to health care. He's speaking to us today primarily about his work chairing the Planning Commission, of course. This body has long been considered the most important commission in the city, at least I think that's probably true. It is a quasi-judicial legislative body responsible for adopting and amending San Jose's general plan and adopting the city's land use regulations. The Planning Commission also acts as an appellant body on planning director decisions, and it certifies environmental impact resorts. Rolando Bonilla, welcome. Please join us.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's truly a pleasure and an honor to be here. On a personal note, many of you may not know that I did work on what we call the 18th floor at San Jose City Hall with my good friend Roma Dawson. So it's really nice to get reconnected with her here in this format. So Carol, thank you so much for that introduction. I got to be honest with you, it's probably one of the better introductions I've ever had. So thank you for that. You know, the Planning Commission, in my mind, is really what makes it the most important commission in the city is that we literally touch every aspect of your life. And we do that by advising the city council on land use policy throughout the city. So on an individual basis, we may have a particular project come before us and we determine what to advise the council as far as what to do with this project, move forward, not forward. So hotels, housing, everything you see in your neighborhood from a land use standpoint comes before us. And our job is to begin the process of shaping it, to begin the process of giving the council a level of guidance that is necessary to make these decisions. But more importantly, in my mind, we are the first major vehicle in which the community is able to jump on and actually weigh in, begin the process of crafting, begin the process of sharing concerns, all of that in the aggregate. Use one project, all of that in the aggregate shapes the city that we have today. And with that understanding, to the second part of the title, diversity. The diversity of thought that I fought for the Planning Commission, to me, is something that is so critical for the largest city in the Bay Area. You know, when I first started my journey trying to be a member of the Planning Commission, I recognized at that time there was no representation from East San Jose, none. And my concern with that was that because of that, you're leaving entire populations of the city out of the critical conversations of how to shape San Jose moving forward. Because every decision we make is interconnected with the neighborhood next to that neighborhood and the neighborhood after that neighborhood and so on and so forth. So the idea that these decisions can be made in a vacuum without proper buy-in from members of other parts of the city, to me, was always troublesome. So for me, the question was always, what kind of a city do we want to be in the next 20, 30 years? Do we want to be this major American metropolis we know we are? Or do we want to kind of have a sectarian view where, you know, Alum Rock is here, Cambrian is there, and act as if we're different neighborhoods and different communities, not interrelated in any way? To me, the answer to that question was simple. We are one city. This city is only as good as every other part of the city coming together, getting on the same page, and recognizing that whatever impacts you impacts me. And because of that, my initial push to diversify the Planning Commission, you know, was some tried to misconstrue that and say that this was an East San Jose versus the rest of the city argument. It never was. My standpoint was always, this is an East San Jose and the rest of the city argument, that we have to make it a standard in this city that anytime we're having decisions, whether large scale decisions at the council level or day-to-day decisions, you know, at the local, for example, park and rec level, we have to make sure that every neighborhood has the opportunity to weigh in. And what I mean by that is, I'm not saying everyone has to agree. We understand that that's not always the case, but we have to make sure that every part of this city has the opportunity to be at the table, shape policy, weigh in, and feel heard. Because now, before I got appointed, it was East San Jose. But next year, right, had we not made these changes, it could have very easily been Willow Glen. It could have been Almaden. It could have been Berryessa. So the thinking was always, we have to make sure that we are all at the table in order to move this city forward. Now, there was a lot of controversy when I went up twice, actually. And there was a lot of controversy because historically there wasn't a lot of diversity on the Planning Commission. And the fact that that was the case was, again, not only troublesome, but also something in my mind that just needed to be corrected. So I, along with a large coalition of folks in East San Jose and actually other parts of the city as well, got together and actively campaigned for not only my appointment, but for the reforming of the Planning Commission. And after a long fight, we were successful in that. And already, you know, under this new 11-member commission, you know, the meetings are a little longer because there's more of us, obviously. But the beauty of it, though, is you can now say that every part of the city has its opportunity to weigh in, not only at the council level, but at the planning commission level. And to me, that's what government is always about, right? It has to really be a vehicle by which people feel comfortable to weigh in, want to participate in the process. And although your group is very active, oftentimes there are many neighbors I talk to on a daily basis that tell me that one of the reasons that they don't feel that they can participate is they don't really feel invited. And I think our job in government is to open the doors wide open to City Hall and let you know that that's your house and that this building only runs as long as you're actively engaged and feel a part of the process, because this is your city. And that has really been my driving mantra since I started on the Planning Commission. That has really been the driving mantra in terms of my decision-making capacity. Although I represent District 5 under this new makeup, I have to be honest with you, I see myself as a commissioner for the city as a whole. So every decision I make, what I do different, and my colleagues do as well, is I weigh in terms of the District 5 point of view. But I'm not saying that the District 5 point of view must serve everyone else's point of view. That's not what I've ever said. What I'm saying is now District 5 has a point of view that's a part of the broader conversation, but my decision making, and I know that of many of my colleagues, is driven on the idea of what is best for San Jose as a whole. And I think that's healthy. I think that's what you want in your democracy. You want to have that local flavor, because we all live in communities, smaller communities, but we live within the largest, the larger construct of the city of San Jose. So I can tell you, every other Wednesday night, every time I make a decision, I'm thinking about how it's going to impact you, how it's going to impact the west side, the east side, north, south. Because to me, that is where we need to be in government. A lot of the divisions that we have now, even at the council level, a lot of these divisions can be mitigated simply by remembering that although we represent districts, we represent the city as a whole. And when you have that at the top of your mind for every decision that you make, these decisions aren't as difficult as they feel. Because when you actually have the ability to objectively look and see, is this good for San Jose? Then you are now moving in a direction that allows for you to help shape what kind of a city you want this city to be for the next 20, 30 years. So I think that the experiment of a, district-driven planning commission, as of, 3 meetings in, is working. We had a very robust conversation a couple of weeks ago about a project, and, every part of the city was weighing in, different perspectives, some perspectives I hadn't even thought about, but clearly perspectives that were being driven from that commissioner's experience within her or his community. So for me, that's really why diversity mattered in terms of fighting for a more robust planning commission. And it's why diversity, in my mind, must always be at the forefront of government. In our city, and the largest city in the Bay Area, we must be the leader for how to govern. We must demonstrate to the rest of the Bay Area that it's not about a political philosophy, a political party, that it's really about what is in the best interest of our residents. So for us, a lot of folks think that the Planning Commission is, that our meetings are as exciting as the council. The fact of the matter is we're a quasi-judicial entity. And because of that, we're very much governed by the general plan and the rules that it lays out in terms of our decision-making. But where it's different is that although those rules are there, we are now, for the first time in its history, in a place where 11 members of that commission, so 10 neighborhoods and the citywide appointee, are now able to look at those rules, assess those rules under the lens of their community and the city. And not that in that order, but the viewpoint of your community within the construct of the city as a whole. I think has already made these conversations so much more robust, so much better. And in the long run, the benefit to the residents of the city is that you're going to get better policy, you're going to get better projects, you're going to get a better connection between your government and your community, because now they're not separate. They're more intertwined than ever before. And in my mind, that is truly what this experiment was about and why it's working. And I will say, I don't know if he's on the call or not, but I think my commissioner colleague, Commissioner Oliverio, may be on this call. I'd like to thank him. He probably doesn't get a lot of appreciation out there, but when we started this conversation about diversifying the Planning Commission, he was actually the one that partnered with me in terms of initially changing the scope of 7 that we had and ensuring that there was a level of diversity within the 7 that we had at that time. And that's exactly what this is about, right? I come from the east side, he comes from Willow Glen, and here we are working together, solving problems that are going to impact San Jose as a whole. And that to me is one of the biggest honors that I could possibly have, to have the opportunity to really think about what kind of a city we want, where we're headed, and to participate in that civic conversation, to me is one of the honors of my professional life. So, and I just saw a note. I understand Commissioner Torrens is also on the call. Thanks for joining. Want to mention her as well. But that is why we fought for this new planning commission. We're a commission that touches every part of the city. And if we're going to touch every part of the city, we have to make sure every part of the city is a part of that conversation and that shaping. And I think the residents of the city will see over time that this is the model for governing. This is the model for how conversations need to be had inward within City Hall. And this must always be the model for how San Jose City Hall has its conversations outward. We will never be the best version of ourselves as a city until we recognize that every part of this city has something to say, and that every part of this city, the thinking of those neighborhoods, must be central to the shaping of our future. Because by leaving any part of the city behind, we lose that opportunity to learn something new, to make something better. And that can only happen through the benefit of diversity of thought. So I know a lot of you have a lot of questions, and I actually love questions and answers. So I wanted to now open up the floor and give you the space to ask me whatever you'd like.
Thank you so much, Rolando. Today, Roma Dawson is helping me to host this event, and she is going to pose your questions to Rolando. And Roma's on our board of directors, and she leads our Housing and Homelessness Committee. Hi, Roma. She also serves on the board of the League of Women Voters of the Bay Area, so she's tuned into Bay Area issues also. She will ask the questions that were entered during our registration cycle, and also any that are entered into chat now. If you would prefer to ask your own question, you can click on raise hand. We'll bring you up, and I'll see it and interrupt, and we'll call on you. So for now, Roma, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Carol. And Rolando, it's a happy coincidence that we have you here on the second day of National Hispanic Heritage Month, September 15th being an Independence Day for Mexico and many other Latin countries. So at any rate, an extra special welcome on that happy coincidence.
Muchísimas gracias.
I am going to start with a question from Gloria Chun-Hu. And Rolando, just to give you a little bit of background, Gloria was on the Planning Commission for 8 years in the 1990s, served as chair for 2 years, and I believe she may be the second or third person of color ever appointed to the Planning Commission. So this is her question, and you've already answered part of it, but I want to go ahead and read it. What's your opinion on how the expanded Planning Commission has impacted and affected land use decisions? And share your thoughts on how it's working. And then this is the important part. Does more need to be done to engage those who've not previously had a voice?
Well, first of all, Gloria, thank you for your service to the city. Thank you for being a trailblazer and giving folks like myself and some of my colleagues on this call the space to be here. I should be asking you questions. I think it's working. And I think it's going to be messy, particularly in the beginning, since it's the first time it's ever happened, as far as 11 members of the Planning Commission. But I think it's working already. I think you have a new cohort that just came on board, and on the first day they came in firing with questions, and by the third meeting they were already making suggestions in terms of how they think the process should go forward on particular projects. And that's exactly what you want. I mean, you do want a level of healthy disagreement, because if you agree on everything, and that's the city's residents aren't getting the benefit of our different viewpoints. So in my mind, it's absolutely working. I will say meetings look like they're going to be a little longer now, but that's not a bad thing, right? That's what we signed up. That's what we signed up for, and that's what we wanted. We wanted robust conversation. We wanted to make sure that different viewpoints were heard. We wanted different pushback, different sets of experiences. That's what makes the city great, right? We're the largest city in the Bay Area. And yet for a long time, and I know folks may disagree with me, we acted as a small town. We're not. We are the largest city in the Bay Area. We should be setting the standard for the rest of the Bay Area. Simple as that. And when you had such a small town feel to the most important commission in the city of San Jose, that was a fundamental flaw that was preventing San Jose from being the best version of itself that it could be. Now we're on that path. There is a lot more road in front of us in terms of how this experiment's going to play out. But I've got a newsflash for you. If it worked for the council, I'm pretty confident it's going to work for the Planning Commission. Although some would argue it's not working there either. But hey, but either way, right? It's going to work out, because that is what democracy is about: giving people the opportunity to be at the table, to feel represented, and that's where we are today. Thank you for that question.
Well, you're preaching to the choir right now, because League is all about encouraging community engagement, and we share your passion for getting the community engaged on redistricting, by the way. So thank you for showing leadership on that. I know you're doing a lot of speaking, and I want you to know, if the League can ever help you, we want to be there as a partner. And I hope everybody's reading chat, and because Pierluigi points out something important, that only council has legal leeway to be creative on negotiations with applicants. I don't know if you want to opine on that.
I do want to opine on that. Right? I expect the former council member to say that. But even that, let's challenge that, right there. Let's challenge that. We aren't there to rubber stamp. We are there to bring our viewpoint. We all come from different walks of life. Some of us are former council members, as is the case with, I keep calling him Councilman Oliverio, with Commissioner Oliverio, right? Some of us have, backgrounds in small businesses. It's not going to be perfect every time, but I'd much rather have a commission that is weighing in freely and not feeling constrained. Because, I went to law school, and one of the things you learn in law school quickly is the law is all about interpretation. And even some of these rules, in my mind, this is my personal opinion, do need to be interpreted differently. So yeah, I do expect my colleague, I'm jesting here with you, but to say that, because he is a former council member, and yes, there are rules that we have to follow, but there's space there for us to weigh in with our point of view. I never want the rules, and as chair, I've been making this very clear. I don't want the rules to be used, though, as a way by which to prevent someone from saying something out of concern they may say the wrong thing. If they say the wrong thing, we've got lawyers that will tell us if we're saying the wrong thing. But again, I want people to feel free and open to share their opinion, their viewpoint, because that's what's going to make this experiment work. And that's what's ultimately going to make this city's planning commission, and in the long run, the city council as well, it will make the conversations much more robust, much more driven by policy and the intellectual aspects that go behind that. Sorry, Commissioner Oliverio, giving you a hard time.
We have wondering what major issues that Planning Commission will face. What do you see are the major topics that you'd like addressed, say, either during your annual retreat or study sessions, or if you could give us as League people some guidance on what you think is important for us to watch on Planning Commission and over the next year.
Planning, I think, unlike the council, is really about the projects that come before us. So it's not like we come in and, I've got my 100-day plan. It's going to come down to the projects that come before us as a body. And we're going to treat each project on its own merits, and we're going to make those decisions and move forward. I would say that the biggest thing I'd like to see more of, and I think where the league can play a major role, and it ties back to my fight for diversity of thought on the Planning Commission. It's more engagement, more involvement, more public awareness about what we do and how our role impacts your day-to-day life. But I do want more people to get engaged with us. I do want more people to feel that we are your portal to City Hall on these land use topics. I do want people to reach out to us and talk to us and, give us the opportunity to learn about your viewpoint, right? For as much as I have a viewpoint as a commissioner, my neighbors may have a different one. And all of that needs to be a part of my daily dialogue so that when I finally get up there to the dais, I can make a decision based on all of the available facts, including the soft touch facts is what I call them. How neighbors are feeling about something, why they're feeling a certain way about something. In that sense, although we're quasi-judicial, we're not the Supreme Court of the United States. I mean, we are approachable. You can connect with us. So I would say that the biggest thing I'd like to see is that this change of, from 7 members to 11 actually also encourages a higher volume of groups like yours and neighborhood groups wanting to participate, because you now have a sense of ownership in terms of having the ability to say, I live in District 5, therefore I have, I should call Commissioner Bonilla, or I live in District 4, I should call Commissioner Oliverio, and so on and so forth. So one of the things I'm going to talk about during our retreat, since it is coming up, is how do we help encourage more people to participate. Now, I understand that as cool as we think we are as commissioners, we're never going to sell out the arena, and that you do have to have either a liking of these topics or have skin in the game, because you either represent our building owner or are concerned about a building owner. But that's not to say there isn't room for folks to recognize the role we play within the city's government, and for them to want to participate and feel engaged. And I'm hoping, this was the thinking here, I'm hoping that now that each district has a commissioner, that group, it's already happened to me, by the way, community groups are reaching out to me saying, hey, come talk to us. You're our person. It's your fault that this is, hold on, I've only been here for a year, but that's what you do want to hear though, right? You do want people to feel a level of comfort reaching out to us and having those conversations.
Well, thank you. And let's get into one of the more difficult questions, or I'll say challenging questions facing San Jose. And this was submitted in advance. How do you feel about San Jose following Minneapolis, Portland, and Berkeley, which have eliminated single family zoning? And I think Sacramento may be part of that group too. What are your thoughts on how San Jose should increase density?
Well, that's a great question. It's kind of the topic of the day at the council level with opportunity housing. I wrote an op-ed with a member of my community saying opportunity housing citywide or nothing at all. But I want to be upfront. That was a defensive measure. I am not in favor of opportunity housing. And let me explain why. In just the District 5 perspective of opportunity housing, in my community, we already feel that we are inundated with everything from halfway homes, transitional housing, affordable housing. And we already have opportunity housing in our neighborhoods. If you walk through any community in District 5, you're gonna find 8 or 9 cars. There's one family does not have 8 or 9 cars. There are multiple families living in homes, and we're already seeing the impact of that density of people. My concern with the initial kind of language with opportunity housing that was proposed is this whole notion of transit corridors. Now, Roma, you and I worked at City Hall, right? Transit corridors is code for they're going to the east side first. And I have a fundamental problem with being San Jose's guinea pig for anything land use related, because we already have form-based zoning, right? The former council member there somehow walked himself into that situation where form-based zoning allows for developers to build in East San Jose with less of the hurdles that one would have building in Willow Glen, Alameda, or candidly the rest of the city. So I have said from the very beginning, we will not be San Jose's guinea pig anymore. So my problem with opportunity housing, and this is why I worked with task force members to fight for that citywide language, is there's nothing more powerful at San Jose City Hall than the rest of the city weaponized and saying we don't want it. Because when I do it, it's the east side. It's the east side. I mean, and this is an honest conversation, right? When the east side is up at City Hall, the typical response, and this is 25 years in government, we're going to give you what we think you need. That conversation isn't working for us, and it's definitely not working for me. So that's where I came with the position of, if you're going to do opportunity housing, do it throughout the rest of the city and start somewhere else. And I said that knowing that the likelihood of it happening now is far diminished, because the fundamental truth is most parts of the city don't want it. So the city was going to have this opportunity to say, pun intended, opportunity to say, we're doing something for affordable housing by shoving it over there. And we're done. We're geniuses. We're done. And in the meantime, I'm being told that the $100 I get now has to work for me. And what I'm saying is, well, wait a minute, you're giving everyone else $100, each district $100 for the conversation's sake here. But they don't have the same issues that we're dealing with, in that we're constantly having to absorb a lot of the issues that the rest of the city candidly doesn't have to face. So my take on opportunity housing, to be very clear, is I do oppose it. And not only that, I took that citywide position candidly because I recognize that City Hall wasn't going to listen to District 5, but they were going to listen to the rest of you, and they are. So that's why we took that position.
Well, thank you. And thanks for being so candid. And now I'll give you one that's maybe a little bit easier to answer, or a little bit more pleasant to answer. A question from Martha Beatty, who's a longtime league member. She wants to know what the Planning Commission's role is on considering and shaping the 2040 our general plan, Envision 2040.
Well, they've got a task force for that, right? They've got the general plan task force that's doing all of the heavy lifting on that. I think it comes before us, and we'll weigh in, but the majority of that work's happening at the general plan task force. And we do have a member of the Planning Commission, Commissioner Caballero, who is a part of that general plan task force. And that's the Planning Commission's voice on that task force. So we will get the chance to weigh in, but as far as the actual rolling up your sleeves and, diving in terms of what needs to be there, can't be there, shouldn't be there, the general plan task force is handling all of that.
And I have another great question from Ann Clark. She is wondering, are there ways the Planning Commission can streamline and clarify processes and rules so that building can proceed more expeditiously?
That's where I'm going to have to agree with my colleague's legal position earlier. No, that's not up to our jurisdiction. The rules are put in front of us. We have to then apply those rules. The council has the ultimate authority to define and shape those rules. Our job is merely to utilize those rules and apply them against the projects that come before us.
Maybe you can speak to, and if you want to use a specific project or just answer in general, but maybe you can explain to folks the number of things that you have to look at. When I think sometimes folks don't realize how much heavy lifting you do at Planning Commission. You've got to look at the general plan, you've got to look at zoning, council policies. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what that's like as not to mention environmental impact reports and all those kinds of findings you have to make.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think I give full credit to city staff for developing these, reports that are bigger than my head, and layer after layer after layer, where yes, you do have to look at the policies that are in place. You have to look at the environmental reports. You have to look at the zoning, whether it makes sense, what are the changes we're being asked to make. So there is a high level of homework, for lack of a better word, that city staff provides us to do. For example, with me, although I meet we meet every other Wednesday, the volume of reading, not including sometimes having to go to a site again, and this is where having commissioners from each district, I think, will go a long way, because I'm not the only one, will go to sites to really understand, okay, here's what the policy says, here's what the zoning says, here's what the environmental says, but now I actually want to go see it, I want to understand that and really bring it to life. Because, very often when folks come before us, this is the best idea in the history of ideas. This is going to, put the city on the map, and everyone around it loves it, and the community thinks it makes sense. And when you show up, you're like, it's not making sense. I mean, you've got single family homes here, and now we're trying to build a, 40-story tower hotel, but all those nuances come together when you do that reading. I do rely heavily on, for example, I'll call staff, get their point of view. I'll also meet with residents to get their point of view. So you've got all of the formal kind of checklists you have to go through. And then I go back to what I said earlier, then you've got this kind of soft touch element that helps you really bring it together. And then you make the best decision you think for the city.
Here's a question that was submitted in advance, and I think it's something we all think about a lot. How can housing be increased without adequate public transit? More cars are not a solution. Do you want to offer some comment, just your general thoughts on chicken and egg issues about housing and transit?
I think one of the things that when it comes to transit here in San Jose, I mean, this is a large city. And the ideal, right? I mean, you look at a city like San Francisco, you've got a bus stop at every corner and underground train station every other block. You go to Manhattan, same thing, but they're really compact. I could literally walk out my door and there's that public transportation system. I think there's a lot of work that needs to happen at the public transportation level to encourage people to get off the road. I don't think, though, and this isn't me taking a position as much as just an observation. I don't think we're ever going to get to a point that we're going to eradicate vast majorities of cars off of San Jose's streets, given the size of this city, given the summers in this city. So there's some practical elements here that, in my mind, we should shoot for as far as transportation goals, but we can't wait for that from a housing standpoint. We have to build as much housing as possible now. I think the council policy level, I think the creativity needs to continue to flow out. I know that recently there was a policy on school lands that's being considered. That's the outside thinking that's needed right now, but that's going to get solved at the council level. But without a doubt, and I've said this publicly, after one of my first meetings, we approved a senior housing project in South San Jose that neighbors were opposing. And one of the things I said was, if we're going to try to solve homelessness and access to housing, we're not going to do that without more housing. And, on a personal note, I've been homeless as a kid, lost our place to live and had nowhere to live for some time. And so when I have these conversations, I'm not being flippant. I recognize that these decisions impact people. These decisions are not being dramatic here, but are life and death. And in my mind, we do need to build. We can't wait for transit to do what it has to do. We're going to have to build as soon as possible and hope that the transit component catches up. But I'd love to see the day where I can walk down the street and I've got 3 bus options to take me to work or any other part of the city. That would be a dream scenario for me, but it's one we can't wait for from a housing building standpoint, in my mind.
Well, you've touched on housing, so this question may be a bit premature, but planning and housing departments have just held their first community meeting on the housing element, which is revised, of course, only every 8 years. So it's very happy to see that that's not going to be siloed and both departments are going to work on it. But do you have any thoughts? First of all, let's talk about community engagement again in this process. And any preliminary thoughts on what you're looking for in our housing element update?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's easy for us to say these are not exciting topics, therefore we should not expect people to run to these meetings and weigh in. But the fact of the matter is, when you have a controversial project, all of a sudden the chambers gets full, or Zoom meetings get full of people. So I think the biggest thing I'm looking for, and this is me talking as a resident, is the city's outreach efforts, which I've been very public about. The city needing to do more beyond baseline to really drive people into these conversations. And I know it's possible because I do it every day. It's literally my job. My job is to take some of the most mundane topics out there in the public relations space and drive traffic to those topics. So I know it's doable. It's just a matter of the city making that investment, or what in terms of resources, including hiring the right personnel to not only make it a priority, but to actually make that priority into reality. So for me, what I'm looking for before anything else is to ensure that we've done as a city our best efforts to have brought in as many viewpoints as possible. And let me clarify something. When I say that out loud, there's this perception that I'm saying we can't move until everyone's on board. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is we shouldn't move until we've done everything possible to have gotten as many voices into the room as possible. There will come a point logically where you've done all you can do, but we haven't done all we can do as a city. So the idea that we're going to say we're doing everything we can already, that in my mind is not appropriate for the capital of the Silicon Valley. This whole region was built on pushing the envelope and innovation. And yet when it comes to communications and bringing people in, all of a sudden we're capped at our abilities. I disagree with that. So beyond the housing element conversation, what I want to make sure that is that conversation has each of you represented, and that your neighbors feel represented or have the option to be there. If we can do that, then whatever comes of that is as close to what the city needs as possible, and not just something driven by a few folks within the government without really having that input. Because we already see what happens, right? I mean, someone thought it was a great idea to keep expanding the city at some point. I mean, throughout, which is why we're so large. And now we're seeing, wait a minute, we should have had a lot more conversations then about what that expansion means, how we're going to sustain that expansion, how we're going to build transportation for it. We're all paying today as residents for decisions that were made a long time ago because the public was an afterthought, not at the top of the, I'm a big baseball fan, not at the top of the batting order in terms of what needs to happen first.
Well, we have an outreach policy that's been debated, and I think it's 6-30, if I remember right. We have an outreach policy that applies to planning commission, council, everything the city does. And I know that some of us feel like that could probably be modified a little bit. Have you given that any thought? And Pierluigi, if you want to enter something in chat, I would love to see that.
In terms of an outreach policy for the city?
Yeah, something that's
no, absolutely. I mean, there was a meeting we had some time ago where I think it was the meeting about whether to go from 7 to 11. And we weighed in, and I pressed the city because I kept saying we can't, and mind you, I'm going to get into it a little deeper too on this topic. When I was pushing the city, I was asking them, how much money are we investing, for example, on social media to get the word out? The city finally said, $200. That was a problem, right? $200 for the largest city in the Bay Area. That's not effort. The other problem I had is that, all along, when it came time for when I was trying to get the appointment, The city always likes to say, well, we're doing everything we can to find candidates of diverse backgrounds for the planning commission. We just can't find them. We just can't find them. We're doing everything we can. The moment the issue became a political issue for the mayor and the council, the moment it became a political issue, well, all be darned, we found a multitude of highly qualified candidates of diverse backgrounds. Candidates, mind you, who had also tried in previous years to have gotten appointed. So clearly, that is an example of the city trying to get by on this front with kind of the bare minimum. But the moment you push them, things change. So yes, I'd absolutely love to see a change in that. I think this needs to be a priority beyond the typical postcards and here's a couple of community meetings. And we have to be just as innovative in inviting these conversations with the public as we are with some of the policies that the council, for example, does at their level.
First of all, thanks, Marianne, for attending our meeting today. Marianne's one of our guests. She's from a different league, but she asked a question: is San Jose, or would San Jose consider any modifications in housing regulatory restrictions based on race to create a more equal environment? I know council just looked at affirmatively furthering fair housing. So you're an attorney, you might be a perfect one to talk about this.
Well, I mean, I'd say back to the earlier point I made about how we're paying for decisions that were made some time ago without heavy public input. What you're asking at the core is an extension of that. A lot of decisions have been made historically in the city where only a few have gotten the opportunity to weigh in and shape. And a lot of the solutions that we need moving forward aren't going to happen overnight, but by ensuring that all parts of the city are at the table shaping. What you do is you're going to, over time, begin undoing a lot of the bad practices of the past that are not working for this city. So that's how I would answer that question. That you do obviously in that question have some legal issues that need to be taken into account that perhaps would not make that directly permissible. However, what we do need is to recognize that when I talk about diversity, this is precisely what I'm talking about. Decisions have been made in this city historically where you are not at the table. And by you, I mean all parts of the city. If we are going to be the best version of ourselves, if we are going to undo a lot of these policies that are not working or work around them, right? At this point, the city is its size, right? It's only going to happen by bringing in new people, new blood, new perspectives. Because if we continue operating under, and this is the one thing that has always driven me crazy. When I first started working at City Hall, and this is why I push. I was told right off the bat, we don't do things this way here, Rolando. And Roma, you remember what I did. I wasn't paying attention to that. My question was always this: did we not do it? Do we not do it that way because it's illegal or because you've never done it before? 9 out of 10 times it was because it had never been done before. And I'm not talking about, earth-shattering ideas. I'm talking about simple things to really bring people into the fold. So that is as long as I'm in public service, I am always going to drive for a push to have diversity of thought, because it's only through that this city will be able to really put itself on the path that we know we're on. But we want to get there in a way that really brings out the best of this city and not in a way that further exacerbates, as we saw during COVID, the divisions that do exist. I said, one of the things I said in my speech for planning commission appointment is that, the council members had, made this big statement about how a neighboring city said it wanted to build a wall between it themselves and San Jose. And, the council members, got up there feeling really good about themselves. Oh, we're not paying for that wall. They felt good. But then when I informed them that there is a wall in San Jose. There's absolutely a wall in San Jose, a wall between East and West. And by virtue of the fact that we call East San Jose, we are recognizing there are two San Joses in one. In my mind, we have to work towards a day where there is no East versus West. We're one city. That's it. And under that, that's only going to happen when we have new perspectives from throughout San Jose coming together and recognizing. As I said during COVID, I was criticized. I mean, I got threats via email. I got people insulting. I got people who were saying that I got sick as a ploy to bring attention to East San Jose. How dare I? Well, first of all, I clearly did not want to get sick. But what I kept saying over and over and over again is, I'm not asking for this to be an East versus West conversation. This is an East and West conversation. This is a San Jose conversation. Today, East San Jose is most impacted by COVID. Tomorrow, another part of San Jose could be impacted by something else. We shouldn't take a dual view of the city. We should step up for East San Jose today and tomorrow for another part of the city, because we're one city. We're one city. This whole notion that this city is divided into two camps is, in my mind, absurd. This isn't a labor or business thing. This is a residence thing. San Jose residents need to always be at the forefront. And that is how we're going to be able to undo a lot of the practices in the past that we're paying for today. These conversations are hard, but we wouldn't be having them if there was a lot more robust public input when they were made years back.
We've had a few questions come in advance, and actually one in chat. Just wondering about what role does the commission have in, say, the development of Google Village, the downtown station area plan, and of course the one that's just recently gotten all the press, the Boston Properties site, the now parking lot right along the river, right there at Waz and Almaden Boulevard. And I have a question about 2 pages long on that one, but for the sake of time, so you have the ability to respond. Could you just talk a little bit about the role Planning Commission plays in approving these large mega projects?
Well, again, it's no different than the non-mega projects. We have our criteria, we have the policies, and we have to apply those to the facts in front of us. And now, happily, I can say we're also applying some of that soft touch, some of that personal perspective in these decisions. And for me, that the Boston Properties deal was one that just happened, I think, a couple weeks ago. And the reason I supported it was, candidly, number one, it fit all of the criteria that it needed to fit within the city's rules. The second is because I knew that area really well and went to the site, I saw what it was, and I saw what it can be. So for me, it made a lot of sense to be supportive of it. But I also recognize, and I said this on the record too, that we have limited authority here. And some of the decisions that I've made that I've been criticized for, I've also said very publicly, I'm approving this to go up because the council has much more jurisdiction in terms of what they want to keep, not keep, change, not change. We are limited within the construct of the general plan policies. And what we're trying to do, in my mind, is help shape what it can be. So in my mind, the Boston Properties project was that. It was something that, in my mind, was a good fit for that community. Made sense, brought a lot of vibrancy, economic boost, more people. But that's not to say that at the council level, they can't further examine to see if there are issues that need to be considered and weighed in on. So that was one of the reasons I supported it. I felt big picture, which is where we needed to be. Big picture, it met all of its objectives. But if there were concerns, to be fair to the public, that's one thing I do say often. We need to be fair to the public. And what I mean by that is when we start going so far out there to crossing the line towards, becoming policymakers, which we're not, then we're giving the public the false hope that we are that body that can create these rules, and we can't. What we can do though is weigh in, shape it, give our feedback, push back within what the rules allow us to do, and then send it to the council framed. And that was my key, framed. And I know that some of my colleagues wanted to defer it. And the reason I didn't do that was because I felt that we had gone so into the weeds that we lost track of the bigger picture. And my concern is always that, and I've been in government long enough to know that sometimes when that happens, the entire concept kind of falls apart conceptually, because everyone gets stuck on this one thing. And it's important, everything is important, but we weren't the body by which to have that conversation at. The council needed to be that body, and that's why I sent it up. So I am a big, I do go to the Children's Discovery Museum quite often. So, and one of my colleagues did say, hey, I go with my kids that don't feel comfortable. Maybe this will help. And I didn't disagree with her. That was part of my thinking as well. I spent a lot of time out there. So I hope I answered the question.
Yes, and I do want to comment, Pierluigi, who I believe also supported the project. Correct me if I'm wrong, Pierluigi, but I believe you did support the project as well. And he points out that this site we're referring to has been planned for office development since the 1980s, and I can personally vouch for that. That's how long San Jose's wanted to see office development on that site. And we're almost out of time. And Carol, I don't know if we can take just another minute, or if you have time, Rolando. Gloria put in another great question about sustainability, criteria or value with regards to climate change, impacts on water supply, all kinds of things. Would you just like to that is a very important part of the League's work. And we have a very active local committee, state and national committees that work on climate change. So if you've got the time, I wanted to give you a chance to respond. I'm sure she's thinking of it as a former planning commissioner, how planning commissioner looks for those things when they make decisions.
I said this for the Boston Properties item, that I felt comfortable with the work the city had done on the environmental component. And that I felt that if this conversation was going to be ongoing, that it needed to happen at the council level. I think we can all agree the environment has to be a priority for all of us. A lot of the fights that I have in East San Jose, folks label as, again, East versus West or resources. No, it's an environmental fight. It's an environmental fight, right? I'm fighting for clean streets. I'm fighting for clean air. And I'm recognizing that when I vote on a project, for example, that Boston Properties project, I mean, the distance between that location and East San Jose is a straight line. You're there in about 10 minutes. Anything that doesn't have environment at the top of mind is problematic. And this is, again, where it does matter to have these district perspectives. The idea that somehow an environmental issue is limited to the area of the potential contaminant or mistake is a mistake. Go back to my point earlier. Everything in every corner of the city, whether it happens in East San Jose, Willow Glen, or Almaden, it impacts all of us. So environment for me is very important because it impacts all of us. If I feel there's too much dirty air in East San Jose, it's going to move in your direction, and so on and so forth. So it's kind of a simplistic way of answering the question, because it's a very technical question, but at the core, to answer your question, the environment has to be a top priority. And I did say this a couple of weeks ago. I know my colleagues feel the same way. The environment is the environment we live in, our children live in, grandkids, and so on. So it's something that in my mind, we do have to protect. And I know for me personally, it's something I always pay attention to.
Well, I realized I want to be respectful of your time, and I see Carol coming out, and we just want to thank you. We know you have a very hectic, jam-packed schedule, but we hope you'll regard League of Women Voters as an ally, and we'd love to have you join us.
I'll join you.
Thank you. And again, I hope you will keep in touch with us about these important equity issues. And Carol, I'm going to turn it back to you now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rolando, very, very much. I learned a lot myself. And thank you to Roma for hosting and asking the questions. Our next Lunch with League is on October the 21st, when we will welcome Jason Su, who is the Executive Director of the Guadalupe River Park Conservancy. This is a nonprofit organization which provides community leadership for the development and active use of the Guadalupe River Park and Gardens. So close to downtown San Jose, this park has 2.6 miles of trails and parks and plazas, usually enjoyed by residents and visitors. We're wondering how the issue of homeless encampments has challenged their mission. We even have our own board member, Kathy Mueller, serves on the advisory council today, and she is a past executive director of this organization. So we want to thank all of you for joining us today. We've been planning to have this meeting in person, but breakthroughs happened, and we decided that we should continue to do it via Zoom. So stay safe and look forward to getting together in person another time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.